Welcome back to Phenomenal UK. Today I'm doing a portfolio review of the St James's Place Polaris 4 portfolio, where, just to note, this is a fund of funds portfolio, so we can actually find this in the Fund Explorer. However, if we was just to base our analysis off of this fund and put it through the fund analyzer, we wouldn't actually be able to do a true look-through analysis and look at factors, sectors, regions, asset allocations, without that underlying holdings data. So I was able to recreate this portfolio in Finominal based off of the most recently published holdings data by SJP. So that way we can put it through the portfolio analyzer and we're able to do a full analysis based on the actual underlying holdings of this portfolio. So the Phenomenal platform suggests the FTSE Developed Index for the chosen benchmark. I am going to put this across the asset comparer as well with the actual funds within the Fund Explorer, because now we have those underlying holdings data. The underlying benchmark should be quite accurate for that. So now we know that, we can put that in and compare. I'm also going to tally up the start dates for this. So for this particular fund, they're showing a start date 21st November 2022. So let's change that for our dates within here as well. And let's change that to the 21st. So we've got the same start date and end dates then as well. Let's triple check. 27th and update. The reason why I'm doing this is just so we can compare performance for a like-for-like basis based off of the current holdings portfolio that I created, and then against SJP's fund, as mentioned. So overall, a lot of switching tabs, apologies for this, but we can see the SJP Polaris 4 has underperformed against the selected benchmark, the FTSE Developed Index. Compound annual growth rate has been 11.2% for this particular holdings data against a benchmark of 15.7%. Has seen slightly less volatility though than the benchmark at 10.4% versus 12.1%. and a Sharpe ratio of 0.63 versus 0.91. Just to compare this, as mentioned, against SJP's published fund data, they're showing the compound annual growth rate of 12.95, so still underperforming against the FTSE Developed Index. Sharpe ratio, I think that's slightly higher at 0.73. Again, though still less than the Developed Index one. I'm going to mainly concentrate the rest of the video on the portfolio analyzer now, as we can see how that's compared directly with the SJP data. I'm going to move over to asset classes and markets. Okay, so for a breakdown by the top 10 countries, we've got just under 54% in US, 9% in Japan, and just under 7% in the UK. Just to note how this compares against the FTSE Developed Index. So the FTSE Developed Index has a 68% weighting towards the US and a 4% weighting against the UK. So against its benchmark, the Polaris 4 is underweight US and overweight UK from a country perspective, mainly investing in large cap. Well, if we move over to sectors, we can see an underweight in information technology, though we're also seeing an underweight in financials and consumer discretionary as well. Quite interesting how we're seeing that underweight in financials, though an overweight in the UK as a country. Moving forward to alpha and factor exposures, we can see the overall equity factor exposure has consistently been the quality factor for this portfolio. Looking at alpha attribution, cumulative alpha of 7.13% for the last just over 3 years, though we have seen negative alpha in the most recent year. Moving over to risks, drawdown analysis and stress testing. Overall, you can see the portfolio has been pretty on par, I would say, with the FTSE Developed Index. Now, if we want to replicate these returns further, again, we're still seeing that quite close tracking in drawdown analysis and stress testing. Moving forward now to fee reduction, and if we was to replace these with a passive benchmark for each of the underlying securities. If we was to do so, we can actually optimize the cost of this portfolio from 1.23% to 0.11% and also see a higher performance as well. Now, one thing I will note with this portfolio is this is just based off of the fund charges of these underlying funds. Now, if we actually look at St James's Place's ongoing charges summary, we can see for the Polaris 4 in an ISA or unit trust, the actual total would be 1.62%. And if we was to hold that in a pension, let me go up, or investment bonds or such, would be actually 1.7%. Now we compare that against a potential optimized portfolio of 0.11% within a number of these different passive benchmarks, or we could even just look at this from the benchmark that was chosen, the FTSE Developed Index, which has seen a higher compound annual growth rate, significantly lesser fee at 0.12%, and a higher Sharpe ratio. So that brings me to the end of this portfolio review. I do hope you found it informative, and if there are any videos of funds or portfolios you would like me to do, please let me know. We'd be happy to do that in the next one. But other than that, I do hope you all will like and subscribe, and shall see you in the next one. Thanks all.